So welcome all to what I hope will be the first in a series of videos. I thought I'd do a video log of me actually building the base for this, painting it, and then hopefully painting the aircraft as well, if I can manage to get it on camera, because it's pretty huge. It'll be in the same scheme, so a cross between these two, with black frame and my white scars with some freehand and stencil work, as you can see on the aircraft. Same basing scheme as well, so my ruins with the sort of forest ground scatter alongside it. You can see there, maybe some dead. See if I can convince Ollie to paint some more. Ollie Hammer on social medias if you want to go look at his stuff. So the idea of the base is then it's just kind of ruins with within a forest, so it's like a jungle temple that I had the plan on doing. The actual rocks that you can see on the thing from a woodland scenic mould, they suggest that you use plaster of Paris, but because I'm drilling into them to put flying bases in, I've actually cast them in resin, just poured resin into the actual mould. The dead guys, as I said, were painted by Ollie Hammer, Ollie Mew, to match his old Death Guard. We had them painted up for a display that we were doing for a Geno event that I didn't end up going to. It's a different story. So the base is going to match these, but obviously on a bit of a larger scale. The heads from these were from Skyware, I believe, and the textured stuff that you can see is done with a textured rolling pin from Green Stuff World. Quite good if you can get hold of them, and there's some videos I believe on YouTube of how to use them, what have you. They're pretty cool. Also works on smaller scale, so not just on my flying bases, but I've done the same here on Kinzar, on his base, and that still comes apart, it's not all glued. It's quite simple to do. So this is the base itself, and as you can see it's quite large. It's 30 centimeters across, so yeah, a bit bigger. 4 different pieces of MDF there. There's a small one at the top, small one at the bottom, and then 2 3mm in the middle. And reason for that is because on the inside there's actually a big steel plate that covers the inside. Reason being, the bottom of that rod, the steel rod, had a steel plate that you can see here welded in, so I had to sandwich it in the wood, so you can see where I've cut the section out for the steel plate. And the steel plate goes in and it's sandwiched either side and then PVA'd and held with clamps. It should hold it, held in its previous life when I had it before. Should sandwich it together nicely. I've also sanded down the bottom edge, just rounded it over slightly, just so it doesn't catch and chip with use. This is primarily a display base, I very rarely game, so yeah. This is the general idea of what I've got planned so far. So it's going to be a rock face, 3 ponds, and possibly one more if I can fit one on the cliff face. A set of spiral stairs going up around, curling around the actual stem of the flight stand. I haven't done the texture on the steps all the way to the edges. Reason being is I'm going to build the cliff face out over the steps, so it's going to actually come over the steps. So it's only the centre of the steps, so it looks like it's kind of carved into the actual cliff face, and I'll put same on the opposite side, so the little ponds look like they're carved in as well. They will be clad with a little bit of stone on the bits that aren't covered in rocks, so it actually looks like it's been built into the cliff. Crazy hands there. I'm obviously dubbing this afterwards. I had more to say in the first run. These are all glued together. These are quite a few different layers of MDF. That's all that is cut, and then the insides have all been hollowed out because it does weigh quite a bit, all that MDF, and then just glued together again with PVA and just clamped. On the back, this is going to be filmed with blue foam behind the rocks, and then built up with the actual bark itself. You can see here I've cut a template. I just put the paper underneath, drew around it, and I'll cut this out on the blue foam on a hot wire cutter. I'll try and video that in one of the later videos. So these are the steps as well. Again, as you can see, it's just lots of little layers, giant jigsaw puzzle basically. And then when I glued this together, I did it in stages, so I glued like 3 or 4 together, and then clamped it up in sets of 3 or 4, and then clamped it all together once I had it, just so it doesn't move around. It's a bit easier to manage so many layers slipping around. And as you can see, I've already textured these with some milliput. So the steps will go in around the centre, and then these again all these little layers. These will be built in to the side of the steps before we put the actual rock texture on it from the cork, but also going to add the texture with some stone effect from Plastic Card Stone Effect, which I'll try and cover in another lesson. The little thing in the centre, that's actually 3D printed for me by Max Cooper from Road to Town. Very kindly offered to do me a few of these. We did a bit of a trade. I made him a blade. I'm going to cast a sword up for him. So he kindly printed me them off, a couple of food dogs, and he's going to do another 3 for me, I believe, as well, so we can fill the rest of the ponds. Brilliant quality from his Mars printer. Outstanding stuff. With these there, I'm just miming away. That's the idea of that with the ponds, is I'm going to have a waterfall coming off each one, so a little bit of running water trickling down from the top of the cliff all the way down. If I can remember where this goes, this kind of slots in. This will be glued and then backfilled, as we said. Okay, so rather than me just chatting about what I'm going to do, I thought I'd do a bit of a demonstration on how I sort of add texture to the stones. Obviously this MDF, it wouldn't look right if it was just painted. The MDF, add a little bit of texture by using milliput. So first off, I think I'm going to show you the tools that I use. So generally just metal sort of sculpting tools. I have a few different ones, but generally for this I'm only using that sort of round spade shaped one on the right, you can see there, but I have a few different ones just to get in tight corners and little tight areas, things like that. I've also have some the soft silicone ones as well, but I'm not a fan. Little disc, MDF disc. This was just a leftover bit from when I was cutting something else, but this comes in real handy for getting the shape of the steps, which you'll see later on. Okay, so on the steps itself then, the milliput. With the milliput, this is just the original normal milliput. Comes in a grey and a yellow part. It's just 2 parts. And same as that green stuff, you just mix the 2 together. Try and get equal parts for this. I don't know if it makes much of a difference, but I've been using equal parts for all these different ones that I've made, and it seems to work roughly equal. You don't need to obviously measure it out, and then just knead it together the same way you would with green stuff. The good thing about this, why it's I use this as well, is, and the tools that are in water, is it actually breaks down a bit in water, so you can get quite a smooth edge with it from just weighing it down. Basically mix it there until all the grey's gone and it's one solid colour. Roll it into a little tiny ball, or however much you've decided to get, and just stick it aside. Okay, so actually making the steps then, putting the texture into the steps, what I do for each step is sort of roll it into a bit of a sausage. And you'll notice here that I'm rolling one side because I'm doing the curved steps, the steps thinner at the on the one side rather than the other. So you can actually see that rather than just putting it the same thickness all the way across, just have it thinner at the edge where the step's thinner. Just obviously common sense. Means you're going to waste less across the whole thing. And it saves you moving it around as well when it's actually on the model. It's a lot easier just to add a little bit more than trying to cut pieces out, things like that. I just find that a bit of a pain. Press it into the corner of the step, so right up against the actual corner itself, as you can see there, where it's thinner at one end and then is the other. And say I use the little spade shaped round ended one, and all I'm doing is just push it into the actual corner of the step, right into the corner. The bottom part, keep your tools wet, bottom part I'm sort of pulling to the edge of the step, and then the upward facing one, it's going up the back of the step, again just push that up against. And the reason I've put 2 bits on there is when you can when you're pushing that bit up, you'll get a bit that sticks over the top, so you can actually join it up with the next little sausage that's above it and hopefully get quite a seamless join there. One good thing about the milliput as well is once it's dry, it's quite easy to carve and sand. It's real good stuff to work with actually. I quite enjoy working with it. So it is quite forgiving. If you do put a little bit over, and you'll see on some of the stairs there's like a little bead across the edge. It's fine at the end. You can either cut it off with a knife or sand it down afterwards, rather than messing around and exposing the wood and things like that underneath. It is quite time consuming, this bit, but it's not hard. You just sort of squish it into where it needs to be. This is where the disc comes in quite handy. You can just roll the disc across the step and it pushes it right into the corner on both sides, because it's got a right angle on the little disc. However, if you don't have a disc, just take a nice flat piece and just sort of rubbing it along the edge as if you like to try to sand it down. Make sure the disc is wet. This is actually, I lost the other one that I used to have, but I have another one somewhere, and the more you use it, the more it gets impregnated with the milliput, so it actually makes it a smoother edge as well, because obviously when you wet MDF it raises the surface, so it can be quite bumpy. So every now and again I'll just sand it down and reuse it, or just get yourself a new disc, a new piece of MDF. And as I said with the top part, just push the top part down to the bit you've already done and just where they meet up. As you can see, no black art, it's quite simple. Excuse the video quality on this. This is just some idiot with a GoPro. It's not a professional setup I've got here. It's just a GoPro overhead on one of the arms. I have got another DSLR camera, so the future ones I'm going to try and get that set up, but I need a boom arm for my shooting sticks, the trigger sticks, and then hopefully that should make it a bit better. I'll set the lighting up a bit better as well. It's quite dark in the room today, but hopefully you can actually see what's going on. As I say, it is quite time consuming. It took me a couple of hours yesterday to get all the steps done. A lot of that was me taking a bit more time than needed. You can actually get it slapped on there, and then once you've got that straight edge when you run the disc across it, as long as it's fairly level, you can go in afterwards with the sanding implements or files and things like that, your knife, and actually work in it afterwards. It is easy to get the texture in the stone here, which you'll see at the end how we do that. But as you see, get them to join up and then just run that disc across it, and any gaps you've got as well, you see the edge near the nearest inside of the curve there is sort of filling out because the disc is just pushing it into there. It's quite a handy little tool. I think we can speed this along. Next, what I do is I get a very soft, this is real soft ended on the paintbrush, just to smooth things out a little bit, make sure it's wet, and it'll just sort of very lightly run it over the top. This will smooth out any tool marks that you have that you can see in the putty. And then we also, later on at the end, when I've actually got the whole step done, you'll see how we get a bit more texture in it. But this really helps to get rid of those tool marks and just smooth it out if you've got any little lips on the edge, especially along the edge of the step where you're pushing the two parts together, and it sort of puts a little roll in it. It's quite easy there just to smooth it out using the paintbrush. You can see these gaps on the inside. I'm not too fussed about those because, as I said, the rocks are going to come over and cover that, so we'll be able to hide all that with the wood when it's turned into rocks. So yeah, not too fussed. As you can see there, that's the finished step. There's not a great deal of texture in it at the minute, so it's quite smooth where we smoothed it out with the paintbrush. But all we do now with the paintbrush, it's a little bit drier, it's not soaking wet. You just sort of tap in the surface. That's me just widening the bristles there, so it's not one big clump, it gets a bit more texture to it. I'm just very gently touching the surface, and it puts a little bit of a texture, so it's like pitted along the surface. Gives you a bit more texture to the actual, gives it a stone, sort of concrete or stone effect, rather than just a flat slab. And again, I haven't gone right over the edges like they are actually slabs over the top, because I'm trying to get this to look like it's carved into the rock face. Yeah, that's it. As simple as that, really. One final thing that I do to the steps afterwards is, once it's dry, I just go in with a hobby knife and just do some little marks and chip it away, again down the centre of the steps, because with the rocks on the side, but also when people walk up the stairs, they generally walk up the centre, so it's going to be a bit more worn in the centre than it is on the sides, and that's just little scuffs, little chips, taking bits out. You can go down to the wood and take the wood out as well if you want a deeper chip, but you can see around where I've done the chips as well the texture that's on there. If like me you've always got stuff left over, don't throw it away or leave it at a bowl to go hard. What I generally do is roll it up and I'll make little pebbles for it, because I'm going to have some water effect in here, a little bit of a river at the top. I want some pebbles to go on it. As you can see, I'm a bit of a mong when it comes to deciding how much putty I'm going to use. This is over the last 3 weeks. Plenty left over to make different pebbles and things like that, or you can make some stones, square stones, if you want to do some block work or something like that. It's quite easy. Once you've put them in a bowl onto some greaseproof paper, with a wet brush, just brush it over the top to make it smooth, and then just add a little bit of texture like that. That just gets rid of your fingerprints from rolling it up and things like that. Just helps hide all the work. And then just leave it on the greaseproof paper and it's gone off. You can see the green stuff as well, so when I've used green stuff I did the same thing. So that's it for the first one. Hope you've enjoyed it. I'll try and keep things up to date. I'm going to film throughout the week, and then hopefully the weekend put everything together that I've done. And then I'd quite like to keep a little vlog of everything that goes into this aircraft. A bit of a beast, and I do get quite a lot of questions about the bases and especially my stencils that I put on the aircraft. So when we get to the painting the aircraft, it should put a lot of light onto it. Again, no black art. I'm quite a lazy painter and modeller. I always try and do things the easy way. So yeah, share a few tips and tricks, and if anyone's got any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, or get hold of me on Facebook or Instagram. Mike Fellhanded on Instagram and Facebook, and yeah, I'm always happy to chat. Cheers.